Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone from around the world. Thanks for joining us today for this amazing Workspot webinar. We got a great topic for you today, and as you've seen, and you can see from this slide, it's running Autodesk apps in the cloud, and even a lot of other apps too. But these are super high-end design apps for your designers and your engineers and so forth. So, what better way to tell the story than, Workspot delivering these cloud workstations in the cloud, and these are AMD accelerated Workspot cloud workstations. And so we've got Lewis Carroll from AMD with us. And then, hey, Lewis, and then even beyond that, we've got a great set of customers here to share their story of how they deployed this in their organization and really changed everything. And in that, we've got Global Finishing is the customer, and we've got Scott, the IT manager, and Manuel, the engineering manager, as well as Leona, the senior designer. It's the dream team. We got them here today. So you're gonna love today. We got 60-minute webinar. You're going to be in it. We're going to ask you guys polling questions and keep you engaged the whole time. If you have a question, let it rip and I'll send it to the right person in the panel today to get that answered before the end of the call. We're also recording the webinar today, so we'll send you the recording afterward. So in case you missed part of it, or if you want to share it with colleagues, you can do that too. Okay, well, tell you what, to kick off the webinar, let's do some introductions and go right around the horn here. And let's start with Global Finishing IT Manager, Scott. Okay, Scott, thanks for joining us today.
Yep, thanks for having me. I'm the IT manager here at Global Finishing. I've been here about 20 years, and today coming live from Osseo, Wisconsin.
Osseo, Wisconsin. So where is that? What's a major city up in that area?
We are very close to Minneapolis, St. Paul, or the Twin Cities. Yep, about 75 miles down I-94 from the Twin Cities.
All right, down the old I there. Great.
Yep.
Well, thanks for joining us today. I guess the snow has melted yet. The polar vortex is gone and summer's here.
Summer is definitely here.
Beautiful. All right. Hey, also on your team and joining us today is Manuel Vega. Manuel, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Brad, and thank you for hosting this webinar. I'm the engineering manager for the mechanical designers here at Global Finishing Solutions. I've been with the company for about 4 years now, and we've had a nice ride so far. Interesting.
And are you in from the same area in Wisconsin?
I'm right now at my office in Osseo.
In Osseo, excellent. All right, cool. Well, we got a lot of folks coming in from everywhere, across the U.S. as well, as in the U.K. and Europe, and even, India and other countries and so forth. So that's great. Everyone made time. We did this early in the day in the U.S. so we could, enjoy the company of some folks in Europe as well. For me, it's 6 o'clock in the morning in California, and the sun is just about coming up. So that's a beautiful thing. I guess in Wisconsin, you guys are 2 hours later, so you got about 8 o'clock there. And so then also joining us from Wisconsin is Leona Manka, the senior designer at Global Finishing, and she's going to provide the coolest live demonstration of Workspot and how she uses it today. Thank you for joining us, Leona.
Thank you, Brad. I'm Leona, and I'm a senior designer in our oven group. I've been working with Global Finishing Solutions for about 14 years now, and I'm also in Osseo, Wisconsin, but I'm working from home.
Ah, beautiful. And it might be funny to some where you said you're in the oven group. You guys don't make home ovens for cakes and pastries and such. You're in a manufacturing company, and Global Finishing creates these huge paint booths for painting cars and boats and planes and just all kinds of stuff. And then you can paint them and you bake that finish on, and that's why it's like an oven as well. Is that right?
Correct, yep.
Oh, cool. And we're going to see just how you design those things. It's crazy. You design the whole thing with your CAD applications as well as the installation manuals and sort of everything. And then it's amazing. I hope you get to visit many of those things once they're built out in the field.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. All right. Hey, and also joining us today from the AMD side is Lewis Carroll, because when we talk about deploying cloud workstations in Azure or GCP globally around the world, what makes them sing is the AMD CPU and GPU, and we're going to tell you all about that today. Lewis, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. So Lewis Carroll here. I'm on the East Coast of the U.S., so a little bit of a coffee drinking advantage over Brad and Scott and Leona. I've been with AMD 4 years, and my team works directly with partners like Workspot and within customers addressing any technical challenges with AMD products in the cloud.
Beautiful. Thanks, Lewis. Hey, and to reiterate to everyone, when you have a question, just go into the little question box and type it away and vector it in right now. We don't save Q&A till the end. We take it as we go through. So if we're talking about a particular topic, you got a question on it, it's fresh in your mind, bam, rattle it in there, and I'll pick it up and I'll hand it off to the right person in the group. And also to reiterate, since there was a question on this is being recorded. And so when we're all done, we're going to send the link to the recording off to those that attended today, but also those that registered. So if you registered and you couldn't attend or you can't attend the whole thing, don't worry. We're going to record the whole thing and we're going to send it off to you. Now, everything's going to be recorded, okay? And so in addition to that, the polling questions. So this is where we're going to get you involved here a little bit, okay? Okay, so let's do this. Where is your primary location? The first polling question. Where is your primary work location these days? All right, so now you got, this is a single choice here. You can only pick one of these. So are you working from home now? Are you in the office? Or maybe you were always working from home. Maybe that's just, so maybe not a lot has changed in regards to that. We've run into a lot of folks that would say that too. All right, so let's go ahead and run that poll and then go ahead and close things out and share those results. And look at that. We got about 71% are working from home, 29% have always worked from home. We've got nobody in the office. So Scott, what do you think about those results?
Those are great. They speak volumes to what we see happening both recently and in the future as far as enabling a workforce just with remote capabilities and being productive still.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's an interesting split. You'll find over time that'll change. There'll be some more people at work, they'll be at home. It'll be a nice distribution. And you're going to find out today with Global Finishing how they've taken advantage of Workspot in the cloud and being able to now have that agility to let the employees decide as we come out of a lockdown. Now, here's another question, and this is multiple choice. What are your biggest concerns supporting folks at home, you know, working remotely? Now pick your top two in here, let's say, okay? So, you know, we got security, we got productivity and performance, we have costs. What about the additional support associated with this? So let's go ahead and pick your top two in here. So this is multiple choice. And then when those polling questions are done, we're going to go ahead and share the results with everybody here. So let's go ahead and close this and share the results. And there we go. So look at that. Now, this is a common theme over the last year. We've got productivity and performance is number one, with security right behind it. And then you can see costs and additional support is a distant third. You know, what's interesting is before the lockdown, and for years, as I've been in the VDI space for a long time, security was always number one for sure. And then after that, it was productivity and so forth. But now it's flipped a little. It's like, I got to send everybody home and they have to work. Our company needs to keep cranking and so forth, but you know, security is important. So what do you think of these results, Lewis, that we have a little shift there between security and productivity?
We do, and you know what? A lot of IT managers have kind of always had to be in this mode of security, productivity, and cost. Pick two, and you sacrifice one. You know what we'll show you today is how Workspot and AMD have worked together to make it so that you can kind of get all three.
Beautiful. Absolutely. And you know, in the demonstration, Leona will actually show you the responsiveness she's getting and talk about productivity herself. Okay, so tell you what I like to do with the webinars is actually start off with a bit of a punchline up front of you know, what our intention is over the course of the webinar. And you know, that is to show you how Global Finishing, you know, a company that manufactures these paint booths of all various sizes for all these devices that need to be painted, and they run their CAD applications, you know, with their designers and their engineers to create all this and to produce value in their company. And they've grown the company, and Scott and Manuel and Leona are going to show you all about that. So what we want to do is use that as an example here and then show you how you can move all those CAD applications into cloud workstations, you know, and AMD accelerated, you know, cloud workstations to run all that and increase your productivity and your agility inside your company, and even bring a lot of costs down. We're going to talk about that today too. When you move your desktops and your workstations into the cloud, oftentimes IT folks forget about all the costs that go away. And that's wonderful when you calculate all those together, all right? So imagine the notion of putting those in a cloud in the region that's in close proximity of the engineer, wherever the engineer and the designer is. So if they're in California or the East Coast or the Midwest, like Global Finishing, or if they're in Europe, you can drop the workstation in close proximity to the designer or the engineer, and their latency is so low that it feels like it's a local experience and super fast. And that allows them to get a lot of work done, and productivity goes up. And it works great for the IT manager, for the designer, and even for the CFO on the financial side as well. So that actually is what we're going to talk about today. And before we jump into that, let me ask you a quick polling question, which is, does your company have a cloud-first strategy? So a cloud-first strategy is where you need some sort of service in the company, and rather than just go buy hardware and software and put it in the on-prem data center, you have to actually look into the cloud offering first and see if there's something that's available for you as a cloud service. All right, you may not have a strategy in your company, but you have cloud services. So this is like, do you have a strategy? And is it enforced across the company, or is it up to the departmental buyer to make that choice? So let's go ahead and close those polls and share that results. So look at that. This is cool. Almost half of the folks on the webinar actually have a fully enforced cloud-first strategy. You know, more and more, it's this, the response on this question is leaning in this direction for sure. And just over a third of the folks don't even have one. Now, they probably have cloud services for sure. It just might not be a global cross-company strategy. And we'll find as we go forward that it's an obvious choice, that it's an advantage to companies to take a look at cloud services first as they go forward. We're going to talk a lot about that as we go. Now, one other polling question is, to pick on one cloud today, are you using clouds today? Are you using Azure today? Now, this is multiple choice. So what are you using Azure for? Okay, are you using it for server workloads, data storage, authentication servers? Maybe you're not even using the cloud yet. So why don't you make your choices here. Okay, yes, make those choices right here. And then when you're done with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the polls, and I am going to share the results. So yeah, look at this. So 54% are authentication servers. This is very common. That seems to be the one that's most prevalent. Now, 23% are not using the cloud yet, so that's good to know. Some of the folks here are not even in the cloud, so you have primarily on-prem data services, okay? So server workloads and data storage, that's pretty obvious, and then even other services. That's a nice distribution on this. So yeah, Lewis, what do you think about this, this distribution here of cloud services and how they're using them?
It's interesting, the 23% not yet after the pandemic. I'm a little surprised by that number, but the yes for other services, sometimes people forget things like Office 365 are backed by the cloud as well. But yeah, I think you nailed it, Brad, with the authentication services, Active Directory and connectors. That makes sense.
Excellent. All right, so what we're going to do now is jump right into the story of really why cloud? Why is it time to get in the cloud? We want to start there. One way to share a little of the insight here is to take a look at this map. Now, this is the Azure map, and it shows 60 regions of Azure around the world. So in every region, there's a series of data centers. So there's just billions of dollars of investment. All the little dots you see there around the world are basically where those regions are. And those orange lines interconnecting them are like terabit multi-stranded fiber interconnects. So the cool part about this is, anytime you become a Workspot customer, essentially that's your new data center. Because with Workspot, we're going to drop a desktop or a workstation on any one of those dots anywhere. Wherever your engineers or designers or employees are, they're going to have great proximity to it, so a great user experience. And if they need to talk to each other around the world, they won't be using the internet. They'll be using that fiber backbone that you see in orange right there. And so it is amazingly high performant, and then great as far as communication time, opening files, closing files, accessing things. You're going to see that in the demonstration today. But it goes beyond that. Workspot creates an abstraction layer on top of Azure, but also on top of Google Cloud. So not only 60 regions of Azure, but 24 regions of Google. And so you as a customer could require a desktop or a workstation anywhere in the world, and we're going to drop it in. You don't even necessarily have to care or know what cloud it's in. So the breadth and the range and the reach of that gives you that great agility. right? And so what's beautiful about this, in select regions around the world, you're going to find either AMD CPUs running, to accelerate or even secure the desktops, or you'll even find AMD GPUs in certain regions that are available for your engineers and designers as well. Isn't that right, Lewis?
Yeah, and if you go back to the poll question at the beginning, security was one of the highlighted concerns. And, security and cost and performance, this is really where we've invested with Azure to make sure we can deliver all three. So, we have the ability on these desktops, on the GPUs even, to secure and protect the data that's in use in the desktop from other people using the same cloud infrastructure. So, we certainly take care of the protection of the data in use. The cloud provider takes care of the data in transit, data at rest, and you have a much more secure solution when you're working from the cloud.
Yeah, and speaking of security, the notion of hiring a team and having your own on-prem data center, maybe in one or multiple locations, and then the skill sets that they have. It's like, years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, you wouldn't find what you really needed in the cloud, but that's clearly changed. The personnel, the experience, the certificates of that you can see on this page here, the billions of dollars in those investments has made the cloud a place to trust today, to extend the range of your business, and certainly beyond your on-prem data center. Even the annual billions of dollars spent on the security experts that take a look at all the signals that are coming in to make certain that's as secure as it can be for you is the idea. So Workspot sits on top of all this. We leverage everything that Azure puts together from a services capability, and we aggregate it together into a solution and then deliver that to the end user. And that's where we're going next. So with that, I'll ask you another polling question, which is, have you ever tried VDI before? So have you tried virtual desktop infrastructure before? Yes, with some success, with limited success, or you haven't tried it at all, right? So this is where you had to buy all of the infrastructure in advance and install it on-prem, put a broker in place, try to tune the thing and make it available to your users. Have you tried to do that before? Okay, so let's go ahead and grab some polling there, and we will then close the polls and share the results. Now, what we see here with the audience we have today is a pretty even split across this. So it means about a third of the folks haven't tried VDI at all, which is a pretty good thing, actually. I've been in the VDI industry for over 15 years, and years ago, it was the only way you could do it. You had to buy it, bring it in, pay for the whole thing in advance. You had to build it. You were awake nights and weekends to make sure it works. That's not the case anymore. Now there's cloud desktops and workstations that are delivered as a full turnkey service, and with that, there's companies behind those services. More and more SaaS services are available this way, and now VDI no longer is a requirement to do this as a science experiment, if you will. You can actually consume it as a service, which is a wonderful thing. All right, so with that, let's go and take a look at that. So that is the why Workspot. Now we did the why cloud, which is the notion of the cloud investment, and it's ready now. It's baked. It's ready to use. And now why Workspot on top of that cloud, right? So we offer this enterprise desktop and call it the modern way to work. We compare it against VDI though, as we just did in that last polling question. The VDI side is on the left here. All these bits and pieces are the sort of things you'd have to buy or create yourself and glue them all together. And like I said, nights and weekends, you're on the hook. And you can never provision this correctly for the right capacity. If you have 100, employees or 1,000, you build this out, and as soon as you acquire somebody, it's already under provisioned or over provisioned. You can never get it right. So all of this is now completely replaced with the right-hand side. Workspot provisions cloud desktops and workstations in the regions of the world next to your folks, and you get linear association. So when you need another desktop, you get another desktop's worth of provisioning. When you need another workstation or 1,000, we provide those to you. So it's linear. You're always exactly provisioned to these users. You're never under or over provisioned, so you're not wasting money and so forth, right? We also give it to you at a flat fixed fee, and I'll explain that later, which allows it the pricing to be very, very predictable. Okay, now what that looks like and how you differentiate that from yesteryear is like it's not a single data center, on-prem, where you might have people from around the country or the world trying to reach in and access a virtual desktop, right? This is the diagram on the right. We can provision these desktops and workstations on Azure or GCP anywhere in the world. We just provide an abstraction layer that allows that to lock in. And again, it's all about proximity. Leona's going to show you a demo in a minute here where she is, well, 20 to 40 milliseconds away from her workstation, and her response time is beautiful. It feels like it's working locally. That's the key to everybody in the world that are working. So you get this almost infinite scalability. You can have multiple operating systems or be in regions. You can have failover across regions, business continuity, things you couldn't have thought of before. And it is not a do-it-yourself model. It's a full-on SaaS thing. And when you're sitting up inside the actual cloud there, now your workstation running in the cloud has gigabit speeds to download and upload files and get access to other SaaS services as well. All right, so the user experience couldn't actually be better. And even if your device that you're running on crashes, it doesn't matter because your desktop's actually running up in the cloud and it's just running the way you left it last time you used it. Now we know going forward, people just want more desktop power all the time, right? Because all these applications, that we're running these days are full of video and fluid experiences. We've got video conferencing and all these things. And so that means laptops need to sort of keep up, and they have been. But it also means, desktops and cloud workstations also have to keep up. And so this is a world where, Lewis is, he lives this and breathes this, because with the AMD CPU and GPU, they're focused on that end user experience. So what have you found here yourself, Lewis?
Yeah, you nailed it here, Brad. The most of the VDI deployments are a CPU only host, then servicing multiple users, and that's fine for what I'd call legacy applications. But I mean, we were joking earlier, when was the last time you saw a web page that didn't have something moving on it, even if it's that annoying ad that you can't cover up? But everything's got more graphics intensive content, more richer content. There's more people using heavy rendering applications, CAD, CAM design, 3D models, visualization. I mean, even product lifecycle managers who need to zoom in on part of a large engineering drawing need to be able to do so remotely and do so with very high performance. You don't have that high performance, you've got frustrated users, you've got support tickets. So this is kind of where, like what Brad was saying, where we're seeing the needs of the desktop must evolve. If you're going to evolve it in the cloud, there's a need for many applications to have something better than just a CPU only desktop. And we'll show you what we've done here with Azure.
Yeah, and Manuel, you've got your engineers and designers on your team. As you manage that team out, you have to think about this a lot, I would imagine, as well as the team you may have to find new applications for them to be, innovative in their designs and their ability to deliver to customers. And so you're probably always thinking about what either the laptop or now, the cloud laptop, the cloud workstation is capable of. Is that right?
Absolutely. One of the things that, and you mentioned it just a few minutes ago, the demand for higher graphics and higher 3D content keeps growing and growing. So you buy a desktop or a laptop and it's obsolete within a couple of weeks, if not less than that. So the experience that we've had with the system that we have implemented allows us to grow exponentially and just continue adding more power if we need to add more power. So the technology is out there and we're just taking advantage of it right now.
Yeah, I like to call that sort of evergreen. When you buy a laptop for someone and you give it to them, they might have to live with that for 3 to 5 years. It kind of feels like it gets slower every time, certainly next to the new shiny laptop that your colleague just got. And the beautiful part about the cloud, it kind of feels evergreen because there's new AMD CPUs and GPUs, faster networks, solid state drives, more virtual CPUs. You can adjust all that on the fly, and it just feels like it's evergreen. It's just always getting better and faster. So I think that is an interesting advantage too, and making it cost effective is the key to that as well. So you can keep your productivity up, and you can also keep your employees happy because they kind of feel like they're always up to date and never super lagging behind. And Scott, this has got to change your world a lot too, because with virtual desktops and this evergreen, we just talked about the advantages there. It feels like years ago, you bought laptops, you were in the business of break fix all the time. And, it's like, who's got that? And where did that laptop go? And, it's like, what was that all about?
Yeah, I mean, definitely you're always, whether it be out on the desktop or in the server room, data center, you're always fixing something. You're always having to update things. There's been, since we've gone live with Workspot, there's been numerous updates that are just done off hour, and Monday morning, come in, and you have access to all the new features immediately. And
Oh yeah, see,
that's not having, there's no involvement in IT for that. It's just done. And I really like that.
yeah, that's cool.
If I can jump in here real quick, in the past, on the management side, I used to have to be planning, okay, we bought 5 laptops, they need to be replaced in 2 years, and I had to have a plan for Scott's team to be able to know which ones we were replacing and which ones were old enough, or you name it, right? All kinds of different things. Right now, if we need more power, I just tell Scott, hey, we need more power. He just off it, right? So it's immediate, the response. I don't have to have a plan in place for that.
Yeah, that's like in Star Trek when Captain Kirk just calls down to Scotty and says, "I need more power," right?
Need more power,
and,
yeah.
It happens,
Yep.
I gave her all she's got, so, but yeah, no, it's beautiful. It's that evergreen underlying platform, and away you go. Yeah, and so, here's the deal though. When you rely on the underlying cloud infrastructure now, and it's getting better all the time, of course. So that it's like next year you don't even have to worry about it. It's going to be better. But we've already come through adjustments in time. And so, hey, Lewis, let's talk about this. Let's talk about how kind of last year, you didn't have the resolution we do now, and that's what we want to talk about. In the cloud, you had sort of a CPU, and then you had a GPU. But there's this middle spot, and you didn't have these points along the curve that you needed to keep the cost right with the functionality and the performance with the user. So talk to us about this gap that we had here.
Yeah, so we call this the missing middle. Brad's got another name for it that I maybe even like a little bit better. We'll talk about, but so you got these more graphics intensive applications. You're supporting remote desktops. You're trying to do VDI, and you go look at the price to upgrade from CPU only to GPU accelerated workstation, and I mean it's sticker shock. It's there's a significant bump to get that GPU accelerated workstation. Then you go try to figure out, all right, well, how do we get the cost down? We'll go do multi-user grid and all that, and then oh crap, there's a license for grid. We got to pay for that, and you're not really saving money. You're making it more complex than it needs to be. So there's this big gap where you need a little bit of GPU resources, or maybe you need a lot. But in the middle between CPU only and a full up GPU, there's this missing middle. You can jump ahead, Brad. And so this is where, what we've done with Azure on the NVV4 series, is really aimed to address that. And what Workspot's done, and I'll let Brad cover this, is layered on, multiple product options that fill out and flesh out that missing middle. So, that very top PowerMax, remote workstation is a high-end workstation GPU. You have 100% of the GPU. That's, kind of the top bar in that diagram we just showed. But you got 3 product offerings in the middle here that are all GPU accelerated, higher performance than a CPU only VDI workstation. We're doing this with Azure with a feature they call fractional GPU, but under the hood, it's all done in the hardware. These are statically partitioned resources. So if you're getting half of the GPU, it doesn't matter what someone sharing the other half of that GPU is doing. Your user experience is always going to be predictable and deterministic. So this is a very good technology for giving you the performance you need and the performance you're paying for all the time, guaranteed. And then we have security under the hood, like I mentioned, that makes sure that whatever you're doing in your half of the GPU can't be, accidentally extracted by someone, doing something in the other half of the GPU. Go ahead, Brett.
Yeah. This is kind of, it's almost load balancing in a way, in some ways, because you'll have some engineers or designers or employees that are using some applications and others are using more intense, and you want to give them just the right resources. And so to have big bricks, is like not good. You need like little bricks, so you can give them a bunch or a little or a few, you get better resolution. And that's what we do. On top of those AMD offerings, Workspot grabs these points on the price performance curve, right? On the lower left-hand side, you'll see there's 3 different points here: the business, cloud, desktop, up through premium and power. So this is versions of CPU, virtual CPU with performance, that kind of goes up in price and capability. And then along the lines of what Lewis just talked about, the business, premium, power, and the power max, this is to having an eighth or a quarter, a half, or a full GPU. What is it that user needs? Now, if you only had full GPU and then CPU, there'd be this missing middle in here. So once we get this resolution of these points on the price performance curve, we refer to it as, the Goldilocks zone. You know, it's not too hard or too soft or too hot or too cold or whatever. You can find that configuration that's just right. Now, Scott and Manuel, you know, have to deal with this all the time as they have new engineers and new applications, and they want to run them on that. They want to get just the right point off to the right designer like Leona, and then she'll come back to them and say, this is wonderful. And, you know, we can even monitor a lot of the CPU and GPU and memory and disk usage to even tell whether it's the right one for them or not too. So that's ideal. So you slide it up. You add a little bit of cost, you know, when you need that extra performance to increase productivity. But if it's over provisioned, you know, that's not where you want to be. You know, you want to be where you want to be. So you figure that out. And, you know, we've worked with a lot of our customers to figure this out. And because our customers are running all these apps and a whole lot more, certainly Autodesk apps and a lot of other apps as well that are GPU intensive. They may be uniprocessor. They're just banging away at a single threaded application or using the GPUs. So we've worked with them to create a table like this that, you know, you can grab a screenshot of this, but again, we're recording this, and so we'll give you the copy of the recording. And of course, if we connect you through real time, you can have the slide and we can talk more about these details. But it's about like which apps are, you know, GPU intensive or multi-threaded CPU or single-threaded CPU, and then how should I configure the underlying desktop or workstation to be ideal for them. So Louis, what do you think about this chart?
Yeah, this is great, and I think anybody thinking about deploying this and not sure where to start, you know, kind of here's your starting point. But to go back to the point you were making earlier, Brad, what's key about this is it's just a starting point. You have the flexibility to get it wrong. There's no penalty for getting it wrong. You can very rapidly move up to, you know, from a power to a power max. You can move from a power to a premium. Those are, you know, a few mouse clicks, right, Brad, to you know, to move up and down that product stack. And more importantly, if you've got a designer that's working on different applications with different needs over the course of a week or a month's worth of work, they don't have to use the same desktop day after day after day. They can use the right desktop for the task at hand. And that's another key point of the flexibility, the agility that, you know, a cloud-based offering can bring to you.
Exactly. And, you know, the folks like Leona, you know, would look at a chart like this, and she would look and see her applications in there, you know. So Leona, if you look inside there, do you see applications you're using?
Yeah, the 3D apps and AutoCAD, and yeah, I can see exactly what I use in there.
Yeah, exactly. And so
Yep.
then from that, you know, Scott and Manuel, you guys can figure out what configuration that would be like a starting point and then take a look at it and go. How do you guys approach this?
So I think we've done it multiple ways. When we initially launched, we decided, okay, let's have some business for the people that are not doing engineering work, and then we'll assign some bigger GPU power for our engineering staff. However, through the 15 months we've been doing this, we've moved people around, and we've had people that come back and say, hey, I don't need all this power. I can just do it with a regular setting, and we exchange things. Just as Louis said, we can just move things around fairly quickly and easy. If
Nice.
I'm mistaken, yeah.
Yeah, and for these offerings, you're going to see CPU RAM, you know, video RAM and disk, right? So these are those points along the price performance curve, as I showed you right back into here, those configurations. But what's nice to know is that the standard solid state drive that you see there is the standard one that's baked in, but you can get bigger solid state drives, a little more capacity if you need it. So sometimes designers will actually pull down larger files and they'll want to crush them locally within their VM, and that's cool. Now realize you're up in Azure, so when you connect to network-based file systems in Azure, you're going to have some pretty high-speed access to that also. And so you can really get, you know, crunch on network-based files. But if you really want to pull them local into your VM, you can configure these with larger drives, you know, solid state drives, and just really get a lot of speed in there when you're working on those. So you can keep that in mind. So yeah, this is it. We're going to continue to work with our customers to learn more about the performance, the behaviors, and so forth, and tune these configurations. You'll see more points on the price performance curve, and again, evergreen. So the CPUs, the GPUs will be faster, the solid state drives are going to be faster and more capacity, as well as we'll get great network speeds as well. We're always working on that, and we're working on that across public clouds. So whether we're working with Azure or GCP, we're working to pull the strengths of all those platforms out and make those available for you. We've got a lot of customers doing this.
If I may say something, if you go back to your slide,
Sure.
one of the advantages that we've had, just with what I mentioned about being able to switch users, we have to keep in mind that all this is virtual, right? So I don't have to tell the user if he wants to go from a business GPU to a PowerMax GPU. We just switch it virtually. They don't have to bring the equipment and have it set up again and anything. They're working out of the same configuration that of hardware that they had when they started, and they can move around to any more power or less power as they need it.
Ah, yes, exactly. And tune that in for best productivity. And then you guys can keep an eye on that, monitor that performance, and then know how that is going forward. You can model that, and then as you add newer designers and so forth, you know, kind of right exactly what to give them. And so, you know, Manuel and Scott, maybe you guys want to talk about that now. How do you approach hiring these days now that you have, you know, virtual resources like this? Are there less constraints? What's your approach?
Well, in fact, that was probably one of the reasons why we started exploring these a while back. Being in the region that we are, getting resources is not as easy as you would expect if you were living in a bigger population hub or a bigger city. We struggle sometimes finding talent. So one of the things that we wanted to explore was the possibility of having resources not located in the facility being as productive as the people that were located in here. And that was one of the reasons. The other one was to give our internal resources more flexibility to work from home when they needed to do it. So yeah, we are trying to use this in the future state to approach our hiring process in a different way as well.
Nice. All right. Hey, and as we work with you and other customers, like this huge list of customers here, we end up working with them on cost information as well. We ask them if they want to share this summaries and so forth. And so we get these models that we've created, and we can share these with you as well. So there are questions coming in, you know, can I get a copy of that slide, like that application matrix that we just had? Absolutely. We can give you copies of the slides. You certainly have a copy of the recording of this webinar too. And we have a lot of information on pricing. If you want to dig deeper into this, we can do this too. So like I said before, you kind of forget about the notion of various costs that don't come up in on-prem arguments, right? Now, in this space here, there's a couple of things to think about. There's not only TCO, the total cost of ownership of each of the desktops themselves, but there's also cost of downtime. So if your service goes down, you got to factor that in too. Right, if like we'll have big financial institutions that, you know, every day that they're down, that costs $1 million because the traders can't do trading and so on and so on. In the worlds of designers, you know, they're billing out hourly rates. So they have an hourly bill rate where they're designing out on contracts and so forth. And any hours they're down, it's pretty straightforward. Those costs are gone and they're lost, right? So you got to keep not only TCO in mind, but also total cost of any downtime. And so there's overall productivity that you can actually range. There's also, you know, when you lose project files because they're copied off onto physical laptops in the field, you might have rework problems because there's version controls problems that are happening because things are disconnected as opposed to all centralized and virtualized, right? And then clearly, you know, tons of costs associated with commercial real estate, opening up new offices and putting network infrastructure in and desks and all that sort of stuff. Hey, so Scott, you know, you were this massive visionary and this thought leader finding this cloud service before the lockdown even happened. So once it happened, you were ready to go. You turned it on and then sent everybody home. You know, folks on the webinar now are wondering, like, what happens next and how do I prepare for this? And it's like, how do you think about commercial real estate and how many chairs you need per, you know, engineers and costs and so forth going forward?
Yep. So our goal is to really not build any more buildings unless it's for manufacturing purposes, because we're expanding so quickly from a business standpoint. But I think that right now we're in IT working on, you know, how do we develop these pods within the company so people can schedule time maybe back in the office and keep the amount of build out on our buildings, you know, down to an absolute minimum. We don't have a lot of room to grow from a office standpoint, as you'll see in the future slides right here at this site. So it definitely supports, you know, the future of what we will look like here.
Oh yeah, yeah. And you guys, based out of Wisconsin, and then you're growing your manufacturing floor. Some things you have to have space for. You got to manufacture things. That's physical. And
Yep.
then other things you don't. And you can hire talent, from anywhere in the world. If you have a new application that you have to bring on to help aid in your design of manufacturing, and the talent that really knows that app well is far away, and maybe they're even at a lower cost structure because there's a lower cost of living where they live. It's like you get to just turn those skills on right away if that's what you choose, so that's the kind of agility that actually is kind of fun here. Now, what I want to do is quickly go through this architecture and then hand it over to you, Scott, just so folks know what happens when it's in the cloud. What does it look like, right? So in the lower right-hand corner is the customer data center. So you would have, you might have some on-prem activity there, maybe some authentication. And then up on the right-hand side over on this area over here, you're going to see that's a single subscription up in the public cloud, Azure or Google Cloud. And up in here, you might also put some authentication, file servers, and app servers. It sounds like from the prior polling question, those are the sorts of things that are running up there. And then when you really say it's time to get some cloud desktops or cloud workstations from Workspot, we create another subscription on your behalf and tightly couple those together with VNet Peer as an example. And then of course, mostly ExpressRoute or site-to-site VPN ties that into your corporate data center. So now when you launch desktops and workstations in this area, they have a full line of sight network connection down into your corporate data center for authentication to access files that are there, but also the internet. They have super high speed access to the internet. Now, on the right-hand side here, you've got an Azure administrative UI and an Azure monthly bill. And so, you're going to get that. And that's what happens over on this side. Now, it doesn't happen on the left-hand side, because on the left-hand side, we create workstations and cloud desktops that are flat fixed fee. And you don't have an Azure admin UI for those. You've got the Workspot administrative user interface, creates an abstraction layer on top of Azure services, and it aggregates those together into Workspot solutions, right, which are like desktops and workstations. And then you drop as many of those as you need, and that's a flat fixed fee. So you don't have to worry about that VM running nights and weekends where no one's using it, like you would, over on the Azure side potentially. If they're not using it, you're paying for something not being used, because we aggregate that all together and we give you a flat fixed fee on this side. So you just drop it in and use it, and you take that cost, that per unit monthly cost, and you've amortized that into your project costs if that's what you're doing with engineers and designers. So it keeps it nice and predictable in that space. And then when your users are coming in, as you can see, whether it's out of the office or even out from home or anywhere in the world, the Workspot Cloud not only configures their VM, but it also configures their Workspot client, so that when they click on that, it establishes a secure connection directly into that VM, whether it's a desktop or a workstation, and then they get full access to it. So you're going to see exactly how that looks right now. Okay, so Scott,
Yeah.
let's go ahead and take a look at your world and a little history, and then how you found Workspot.
Sure. Yep. We'll quickly run through the history. Are you going to advance that?
Oh yeah.
Or there we go. Yep. So in 75, right here in Osseo on the other side of the highway, JBI was founded as Jerry Bowie Industries. In 89, I believe, was the expansion over onto the other side of the highway, which is the building that we sit in right now. Well, it'll get much larger, but in 98, the Curran Group acquired JBI, and they're our parent company with a multitude of other companies about our side. And in 2000, we acquired BlueSurf, and me, I came in here
Right.
and started working on the IT side. Just through that space, that growth, there was some issues within IT, and just helped kind of lead the development and implementation of lots of infrastructure. But in 2003, we joined. Our biggest one was joining with Team Blowtherm to create Global Finishing Solutions. In 05, we did our first manufacturing expansion off the back end of one of the buildings. In 2011, we grew even another one, and 2013 and 2014 is where the office space doubled, or more actually. and that is kind of one of the offices where I'm at today, and so is Manuel. In 2015, we are starting developing a new products brought in for the automotive team, Revo system. In 2016, we built the Center for Excellence, which is a training facility, which is a fascinating area that has R&D attached to it, as well as manufacturers supplying us with their equipment so we can test that within the booths that we make, and then train staff for some of our clients as well. 2019 and 2020 is just an expansion of everything that we do. This company is set to grow, so it's going to be an interesting journey. And then this is the big journey. So it's an interesting, there's throughout these few slides, there's quite a bit of things that are happening at the same time. You know, I was first kind of asked about supporting Autodesk Vault on premise. I think in about 2017, we installed the 2018 version on-prem hardware. And it was a single server that actually kind of had a dual role, because it was running both the Vault and it was also hosting the file store that was currently being used. So there was a transition period between how we did CAD work and then where we were going to. What happened in 2019 was a discussion to start, doing some upgrading. And during this time, you could see the end of life for some of the equipment that I have in my data center, and Azure was coming on and maturing. And so I started looking at kind of, can this workload land out there in Azure? And we were preparing some of that, running Azure Site Recovery and such. And as we planned that upgrade, I worked with Microsoft to engage a partner called 3Cloud to help us build that landing zone into Azure. I could tell from what I was doing before that I was creating all kinds of little pieces and they weren't very uniform. So 3Cloud had the expertise to kind of configure a paired data center region, between North Central region, which is where we're at, and the South Central region for some redundancy. And they brought along the governance of security and network, and most importantly, naming servers, right? So IT is trying to control that sprawl of that growth so that it's all fairly uniform. On to the next slide. So while that was happening, Manuel came to IT, me specifically, to just kind of talk about, hey, what can we do to support our team remotely and give the design team and the engineering team the access to their work from wherever they're at. We had been moving a lot of people to the VPN, and we had voice enabled remotely as well. So I went back to Microsoft, and they're the ones that actually introduced me with Workspot. And through our discussions and work with Workspot, we started targeting that same North Central region where we built the landing zone, because you want that consumption to happen right there, right next to one another. You gain a lot of performance doing it that way. We were talking about, the GPU systems or business class systems, and what applications we need to support for our designers and some of the other staff here. When we went to kind of a proof of concept, I created, we still ran with Autodesk Vault on-prem, and I created a file store on a server that the on-prem server would sync that file store, so that through the proof of concept of the desktops, those desktops were really pulling their Vault files from that store out in Azure. Not necessarily the way I found out after we did our in production Vault server, that it's not exactly the way you want to run it, just because Vault or Autodesk point of view is you should have a SQL server running with a file store. So in the event that there is an outage, it would support failover. But again, we were just kind of doing a proof of concept, so that worked out. Our proof of, go ahead.
If I can jump in real quick,
Yep.
As Scott mentioned, we had the interest on being able to provide a better working environment for the designers that we had on site. when they need to go work from home or they got sick or whatever the reason was, to be able to provide them something more reliable than the typical VPN, because it's glitchy, and depending on how many users are in, it drops and it doesn't give that same performance that the designers have when they're on site. So as Scott mentioned, he set up a setup of test environments, and actually Leona was one of the first designers that was introduced to the system, and she started testing even prior to lockdowns or things like that.
Yep, definitely. Yep. Go on to the next slide. So we started in earnest with the proof of concept in January 2020. That was derived from the discussion in 2019. We committed to those desktops and got busy kind of deploying them, going through the onboarding. And this is the part that I always find a lot of strength in working with Workspot, is that team, both the onboarding team and the post, support that comes on. They're very knowledgeable. They're always there for us. I can make some changes and I know who to call if something doesn't work, or it's a very good team. We kind of walked down through a list of applications and versions of the software we were running. We kind of scoped out those POC desktops. We added in the authentication method, so we backed our login process to the Workspot desktop with MFA. We deploy Okta here for that. The team also kind of defined, hey, what is the success criteria? What are the goals that we're trying to meet, and to make sure that we hit those things. And really, the big piece of it is, we started deploying those desktops on about 3/17 and March 17th, 2020. By over the weekend, I think the word kind of came down in the state that we're probably going to be closing. The governor was preparing to kind of make an announcement. I know, and Manuel, I'm pretty sure this is how it worked, but I feel like on Monday morning we got called into our CEO's office, and he asked for plans to be on the table by Wednesday. And we kind of walked back with a smile on our face, because I was pretty sure we were going to make those plans work. By then, I mean, even with the limited amount of time that some of our test users, Leona and a couple others, had been on, they're like, this is just humming. This is like, it's running perfectly. And so that Wednesday, we started working with Workspot to get those desktops set up and provisioned, and our workforce went home fully operational on March 30th. This office was empty. Everybody was home. I mean,
as Scott mentioned, it was literal. We really came out of the CEO's office, of the president's office, with a smile, because in our heads we were ready. It was just a matter of okay, let's figure out how many workstations, workspots we're gonna need for each different function in the company, and Scott just go back and flip the switch, talk to Workspot, and have them set up the stations, and it was an immediate response. So
it was
nice.
seamless, and it was interesting too, because by that time, within a very short 3 or 4 days, that north central region was getting slammed for Microsoft. The requests were coming in just hot and heavy, and I mean, luckily we were at the front of the line to get those things.
Exactly, and got designers like Leona up and running. So let's go ahead and cut over to Leona, and she can show us what her world looks like. There you go.
All right. Well, as they said earlier, I started using Workspot shortly before the shutdown happened. So I was able to have all my AutoCAD and Inventor settings already uploaded and set up. So when we were sent home to work, it was super simple. I just had an Ethernet cable, and I plugged in my laptop to my router, logged into Workspot, and I was working just like I was in the office. So the speed when I was working from home using the Ethernet cable, it was about 70 to 80 megabits per second, and the round trip time was approximately 29 milliseconds. Since that, I've had to move, and where I live now, I can't connect to my router directly. So I set up a mesh Wi-Fi system, and I'm fully wireless, and I'm still running an average of 30 megabits per second with a round trip time of 40 milliseconds. Whether I'm connected wired or wireless, it operates perfect because I only really need 2 to 3 megabits per second for the same user experience as if I were sitting in the office. As you can see here, as I rotate around and zoom in and zoom out, it doesn't glitch, it's immediate response. So when I'm using Workspot, the products I'm usually using are the Microsoft products. I use AutoCAD, Inventor, Vault, IFS, Adobe, the internet. There's probably quite a few more we use that I'm not thinking about. I guess the transition from working in the office to working at home using Workspot has really been a wonderful experience personally and professionally. My productivity has probably increased. And then personally, it's been great because if, say, there's an appointment or something, you miss a couple hours, you can punch in later that night, but you're home, or work when the kids are sleeping, or Saturday morning while they're watching cartoons. I guess I'm just overall thankful that I've had the opportunity to test out using Workspot.
Nice. Hey, it looks nice and fluid too. You know, we're watching this
Yeah,
over GoToWebinar, but there's an added delay, but it still looks fast even that way.
yeah. From my desk, it's instant.
Hmm. Hey, so what's your commute if you had to drive in?
Before I moved, it was about 20 minutes. Now it's probably 10 minutes.
Oh, you moved even closer.
I did, yeah. Yep.
Ah, good.
But
She's
still,
not
that's an hour.
harming anybody.
It's still an hour of my day
Right.
Yeah,
saved. Yeah,
yeah, that's nice. You cut out the commute time, so that's wonderful.
yeah,
So it looks like it's so fluid there. You wouldn't even know. It feels like you're running local, but it's running out of the cloud.
yeah. It's amazing.
So Scott, how is this for you now, provisioning these things? If you need to spin one up for a new user, what is that like?
It's as simple as it can be. I mean, you know, we again we fluctuate seats around a little bit. Some people come, some people go. So I mean, we have some available. If we don't, we can easily provision a new one just by adding it into our tenant. But there's really nothing to it. We actually even pull in remote teams for development and support of some of our other applications here from very far away places. And nowadays, we use a copy of Workspot to get them into accessing our network.
Hey, and Manuel, how distributed is your workforce? Where are the folks geographically located typically?
Well, currently, I would say they're within a 40-minute radius of the current location. We don't have design resources that are outside of Wisconsin. However, as Scott mentioned, we are working with a couple of consulting companies and a couple of engineering firms for different projects, and they have access to Workspot to the work that we need them to do. So
Yeah, so whether they're employees or contractors,
yeah,
it's nice. You keep the intellectual property all tucked away in the cloud and you can let them access that. So that
absolutely.
is
We
amazing.
don't have,
Thanks.
yeah, we don't have a need for anyone to download files anymore. They can just log in and access, just as Leona mentioned. So the transition was seamless, in my opinion.
Excellent. All right. Hey, with that, we'll summarize and wrap this thing up and bring it home. Scott?
Yep. So this is just a quick on the back end. You know, we were doing a lot of stuff that were kind of in a testing area, and this is just kind of looking at how quickly and good the support is from Workspot. And we put in production our actual landing zone that had all the proper governance that we were looking for. We built SQL server and a new Vault production server, which also holds backups and some other things on it. But working with Workspot, you know, we had to create that new VNet peer, and their team, you know, on and off time, you know, we were able to move that and point it to the new stuff, and you know, the upgrades just are pretty seamless. It's yeah, it's a good experience. Great experience.
Well, thanks. Hey, and like I said, overall, thanks for everyone for your questions that have come in. There was another one that came in from Brett. Let's see, Maltby, and he was talking a bit about the setting up a VM for a user and how you're handling profiles and so forth. Are you guys doing anything special for that?
They're not necessarily. No, the profile is it's I don't know exactly how to answer that because Michael does a lot of that for some of my staff now. I've kind of handed that off, and our profiles are a one-to-one. So I mean that is a persistent desktop for that user. They're just provisioned through Active Directory into Workspot control and then given the proper template. We have multiple templates created depending on whether you're a GPU enabled system or a standard business system. So it varies a little bit. Yep.
Yeah, and that's cool. We have other customers that are using various different methods and applications to do profile management. Sometimes, even if it's a one-to-one and it's a persistent desktop, sometimes you'll want to take that profile and move it onto a different VM for a different reason and so forth. And the profile management may be only used for that purpose, just in the off chance that you're going to move some around, and it helps remove some of the headaches. So that's possible, and some of our users our customers are using that. Brett, if you got any more questions on that, send me a note directly, Brad at workspot.com. And if there's any other questions, you guys can send them there as well. We're at the top of the hour, so we did it, ladies and gentlemen. 60 minutes, the most beautiful webinar ever, with the dream team on here telling the whole story. Scott from the IT side, Manuel from the management side of the design team, and Leona, I want to thank you again for your spectacular demo. And just the fact that you're sitting at home and you're using this all the time and you've been doing it for 15 months, it's so amazing for me to connect with the folks that are actually feeling it every single day and driving value from it. And I love hearing your story, and you did a great job. Thanks, Leona.
Thank you.
So thanks also to Lewis Carroll joining us from AMD. Like I said, the spark, the power, the engine behind the CPU and GPU that makes all this possible as more and more regions of Azure and more locations and more clouds and so forth are powered by AMD. You guys are going to feel the benefit from that as well. So thank you, Manuel, for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Brad. It was great to be here.
Yep.
Thank you, Lewis.
Yep, thanks, Brad. Thanks, everyone.
And thanks, Scott, for bringing this whole band together. It's a great story. And I'd like to thank you again and remind everyone there's a recording here, and I'll share that with everyone afterwards. So thank you, Scott.
You're welcome. Yep.
And thank you to the audience that's out there today. We got a little note from Robert Bow. He said, great job, guys and girls, or women and men, however you do that properly. Nice and informative. And that's what we try to do.
Cool.
We certainly do. And if there's any follow-up questions whatsoever, send it to me, Brad at Workspot. And then realize I'll also send you the recording, and I'll send you the invitation to the next series of webinars that we do going forward. So thank you, one and all. I hope you have a great day, the rest of your day, wherever you might be in the world. And let's be safe out there. Take care, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.